Dr. Thomas Griggs. I wrote in there author and geek whisperer, and that's kind of what I have taken from getting to know him at the Hub and being in Boylan Heights, but I'll go through a little bio about him. So he's the president and CEO of New Science Consulting Group, which is a 20-year consulting firm that provides on-site executive leadership development programs and conflict resolution for organizations across the U.S. His particular interest is in designing effective programs that bring research scientists, engineers into new business ventures, and he especially likes to design and implement solutions to apparently impossible challenges. Dr. Griggs' unique expertise drives from his study of applications of chaos theory to organizational leadership, from over 20 years training in the use of cultural group analysis. Former director of employee assistance and managed mental health programs for Aetna Life and Casualty, Dr. Griggs is currently a senior consultant with Visions, Inc. in Boston, Mass. for training and consulting in cultural differences in organizations across the U.S. and abroad. He's a graduate of Duke and holds a doctorate in clinical psychology from the Pacific Graduate School of Psychology at Palo Alto, where he received an ARC Foundation grant for peace research and the Outstanding Dissertation Award for his doctoral thesis. He has been on the adjunct faculty of Duke University and at the University of Richmond. So without further ado, Thomas Griggs.
Thank you. That was such a long introduction, I think I'm almost out of time. So good morning. I'm glad you're all here. I was not expecting the Geek Whisperer portion. I'd kind of forgotten about that. Thank you, sir. What that refers to is the fact that I use cultural group analysis to understand conflicts in the workplace. And there are, in some startups that I've worked with, the glow-in-the-dark MD, PhD, lab rat wizards that are responsible for the intellectual property on which the company's founded, found it nearly impossible to talk to the biz dev people that were making things happen on Wall Street. And so part of what I did was to get them together so that they could learn how to talk and translate, communicate, and that's where that comes from. I actually use it when I go to the Apple store. If I go in for training on the, like, an iMovie program or something, which is totally baffling to me, and I ask the trainer, how do I do this? If you've ever had that experience, you notice like 7, 8, 9 minutes later, he's still going, and I say, wait, stop. You know, I'm not going to remember any of this. Not only that, it was not what I was asking you. So we go back to this Geek Whisperer thing, and I say, I'm going to ask you one sentence question, and I want you to give me a one sentence answer, no more. Okay? And he says, yeah, this is John, my friend. And so we play for 45 minutes, and for 45 minutes, all we do is I ask him single sentence questions, and he gives me single sentence answers. And I learn a ton of stuff, and I remember it all. So I tame the geek by playing a game with him called one sentence question, one sentence answer. That's what that refers to. So that happens to be one of the techniques or ideas that I've come up with to help groups be sustainable. And we'll talk more about that. Now I have 4,000 slides, and we're not going to look at all of them. We're going to jump a little bit, so forgive me about the sequence here. How are we doing? Is this working? Oop. There we go. Okay. So, you know that, right? That's where we are. Oh, looky there. What's that? You know that, right? Who knows that? Yeah. know what that is, right? That's everybody wants to rule the world. I'm not going to go through all that. I wish I could. I'd love to just listen to the whole thing because I love that song. It's about saving the world. It's about wanting to rule the world. But, you know, they've got it going both ways in there. And I think for us to be sustaining our communities, to save the world, that's what the book is about. That's what the title of this is about. I haven't finished the book, but that's what leads to the title of this. We're talking about saving the people who are saving the whales. That's my thing. I can't be everywhere and do everything with all the causes I believe in. Just not going to happen. But if I can leverage the groups who are doing that by helping them stay alive, not get burned out, that's what I want to do. So that's what's behind this. That's what I mean by sustaining. People mean different things by sustainability. I want to make it easier for folks to change the world, is basically what it's about. Now, part of this is about the search for resources. And when I ask nonprofit leaders, when I'm interviewing them for my book to give me stimulation feedback, and I ask them these questions: what's your biggest headache? What would sustain you the most? What do you think the first thing is they say? Huh? Fundraising. Yes, right. Okay. Money. You know that? Who knows that? What is it? Dire Straits, money for nothing. Yeah. All right, we're rolling here. I'm glad that worked. We were having trouble with it. Whose money and from where? Where's it come from? Now, this is a little digression. I'm talking about nonprofits, but social entrepreneurs who are starting up companies are often looking for money, right? I call this the entrepreneur's dilemma. Future success is a function of raising capital. Money follows management. But the management that money follows is a function of having prior success. So if you're new and you're starting out and you don't have prior success and need to raise money and money comes, you see how this goes? So, Ray Charles got that one right. You know that song? Them that gots is them that gets. Oh, there he is. How about it?
Them that gets is something I can't see.
Okay, now it gets worse though. So that we know. Now, how do you get prior success? Well, prior success is a function of good judgment, right? You know where good judgment comes from. It comes from experience. And how do you get experience? Bad judgment. So, the solution. Therefore, that's how to make money. Right? I rest my case. Now, actually, when I started preparing this, I got off on this, and I went back and I went through my life and I looked at all the different things that I had done to acquire experience and good judgment. It was a really long list. It was like a rabbit hole of all the mistakes I made, all the bad judgment that I had engaged in, and I thought, no, we don't have time for that, so I set that whole thing aside. And it's complicated. Now, I'm kidding around a little bit, but the social challenges that we're facing in society and in the world are extremely complicated challenges. So is the running of our organizations and our businesses and our groups. It's a complicated thing. There's not a simple answer. Now, you all know this one, right? Can't solve problems using the same kind of thinking that we used when we created those problems. Famous saying. I learned that through my sister. Meredith. Ask a stupid question, get a stupid answer, Tommy. Same principle, you get it, right? We have to ask better questions. I have to think in a new way. So this morning I want to talk about the architecture of sustainability, a way to think about the 5 pillars, the 5 levels of it. A little bit about design. If we have time, which is a little unclear to me, some techniques for overcoming the barriers, using the understanding of the architecture, and in particular power discovery questions. It's the ability to ask much better questions based on a different way of thinking. So the architecture Let's see. Well, yeah, this is what I was just saying. Let me pause here. The challenges that we're looking at in the world. Okay, pretty significant. That's the massive part. It's easy to feel hopeless or get burned out chasing after these things. So let's take one of those, and I want to ask you, how do we put an end to domestic abuse in this country? What's the root of the problem, and what do you do to stop it? So give me some answers to that. Just kind of holler them out so we can hear them. One sentence idea. What's the root of the problem of domestic abuse?
Marriage.
Marriage. Okay, it's fine. This is all going to work. What else?
Sexism.
Okay, how do you put an end to sexism? What's the root of the problem of sexism? What do you do about sexism? Education of whom? Everybody. Okay, what else? What do you do? How do you put an end to sexism and domestic abuse?
Emotional empathy.
Emotional empathy. All right, remember what you said because we're going to come back to it.
Start young.
Start young? Start young doing what?
Education.
Education. All right, what else? This is a crowd that's interested in education and knowledge. That's a big shocker, right? What else?
Teach conflict resolution.
Teach conflict resolution. Thank you, man after my own heart. Nobody's saying anything about the law or how you fund the programs to do this or what kinds of groups are already working on the problem. I know you may go there. The 5 pillars of sustainability are these 5 levels. Personal, interpersonal, that was that marriage comment. That was 2 people. Awareness, commitment, vision, values in one person, that's personal level. Interpersonal level just refers to 2 people and the strategies there. So some people want to have meaningful communication between a man and a woman to achieve gender equity, and that's really where their focus is teach me the communications I can go one-on-one with. They're not interested in a bigger picture. Groups. I would say that everything happens through groups. Nothing happens by me alone. Somehow groups make whatever ideas I have come into being. So a group is defined in this model as 3 or more, up to a defined number of people that you can actually see, talk to, and register. It's a meeting. It's not an indefinite number of people. And that's important. This distinction about 1 person, 2 people, 3 people up to a meeting is significant. Try to ground in that. Next level is cultural. That's beyond the room. That's the societal level. That's the domain of media. One-to-many communications. Broadcast. It's marketing. It's gossip. It's storytelling. It's all the things that go out throughout a population that you can't really manage the way you can manage a meeting. You can't orchestrate those one-to-many. That's communications. That you can a little bit. It's the PR and marketing professions, and it's public opinion, managing it. The last level, the 5th level, is the institutional. That's about law, policy, procedure, budget, staffing, programs, structure. So when people talk about challenging racism, they often use the term structural racism. That's what they're referring to. Or structural sexism. That would be inequity in pay for the same work. And changing that would be an institutional intervention in my language. So it's good to have awareness, and it's good to be able to communicate, and it's good to have groups working on this stuff to change structure and to publicize it broadly, you see. That's a 5-level approach. You with me on this? That's what we're doing. Now, I know that most of you probably understand a multimodal approach to these issues. You've seen this, right? It's holistic. It's not unfamiliar. Well, the main point I want to make is that this is deceptively powerful in the sense that if you actually start to use it, you discover that you probably have a favorite level that you like to go to. So let's go back to what you said. What was your answer, your first thought? How many people were you picturing when you said that? You were picturing two, you were picturing two. See? So it may be that your favorite level is the interpersonal level of analysis, and you're about communication and understanding between two people. Now you have two people doing that and have a group witness it, and that can be useful. But if you're leading a group, you manage a conversation between two people differently than you manage the dynamics of a whole group. If you stand up on a stage in front of the world with a microphone, you do that differently than you can't manage the dynamics of a group when you're on a platform that big. Make sense? I hung out with a speaker a while back, and she would ask these rhetorical questions like, does that make sense? And then she'd say, everybody say yes. That feels like mind control to me. I don't say yes if you want to. Don't. Okay. So these are the 5 levels of leadership. They're the 5 levels of analysis, strategy, action, evaluation, sustainability. So if somebody says, how do you evaluate the success of an inclusive diversity program? I'm going to run it through those 5 filters, and I'm going to get measures and action plans at each one of those levels, and I'm going to find who in the population has one of those as their favorite level, because that's what they're going to do anyway. The people that don't like the institutional level of policy and procedure, don't assign it to them. They're not going to do that. Okay? So, the way we approach these complex social issues is also the same structure to create cultures or environments in organizations. So a culture of sustainability or a culture of generosity or inclusivity, innovation, engagement go down the same route. The actions, the measures, the evaluations are all going to be systematically at that level. If you leave one out, you will find out about it because somebody in the population will not be on board. Walk the talk, that common phrase, walk the talk means get them all lined up and do them at every level. Don't leave one of them out. That's what that means. Now, there are some ways we can put this into motion. I focused a little bit on money because of the theme, and I also focused a bit on meetings because, as I said, I believe all work gets done through meetings. No way, I'm on schedule. That never happens. All right, so there was a garden, a nonprofit, a botanical garden, and they were their precious gem in the state. They were preserving the plants, and it was a sanctuary for people. People would go there and be restored. It was a beautiful place, but they needed $3 million to stay open. So the fundraiser that they hired called me and said, they want me to raise all this money, and I can't do it because they aren't ready. They're a mess. So I went down, started talking to them. They were arguing, dropping out. People were threatening to leave the board. I'm not going to give my money if so-and-so acts this way, all that. They were concerned that the next generation of leadership didn't exist because the people that were there at the beginning were quite elderly and they weren't going to be around too long. So what do? Went through what I just described and asked them, got a contract with the board. Money follows management. If the board is strong, people will donate. So I said, how much do you all, the feasibility study said that there is $3.5 million out there in the community waiting for you if you go ask for it and if you look good. So I asked them, how much can you raise if you are in your current condition of this kind of turmoil? They said, average of their numbers they gave me was about 1.2 mil. How much could you raise if you were fully aligned, excited, vibrant, and connected? And they said, oh, we could easily do 3. Because these people are leaders in the community. Some of them check signing CEO types of folks. Okay, so now we have a contract that we are going to engage in this process of becoming aligned. It's a formal agreement we had, and it had numbers attached to it. So after the strategic planning retreat, we opened up with, I asked everybody to say, why do you keep coming back here? And they told the stories. And the elders told the story of why they wanted to start this botanical garden and what it meant to them in their lives. People were moved to tears. The amazing thing is, they didn't talk about that for months and months and months. They were just doing the work and fussing at each other. They'd forgotten how important it was. So it's a personal level question and inquiry to ask people to get back in touch with a value. And I know you can do that, right? I'm just putting it in a systematic frame of reference here. Now what happened was the group in the retreat became so excited, joyful, that they recognized the elders. Decided they wanted to honor them. They decided, partly because I sort of slid the suggestion in there, that they create a baby book of the stories that the elders were telling of the birth of the garden and how it came into being. So they were capturing that, and then somebody realized, maybe because I had a nudge, because I'm thinking cultural level, that becomes the basis of the story for fundraising. And if you take a fundraising consultant, they walk you through the steps, they're going to have you do this stuff anyway. But it depended on a group dynamic where certain people were quite angry with each other. We did some reconciliation work with them and gave them roles in the group process in order to pull off the whole group momentum, you see? And so that meant talking with a couple key elders. These are blue-haired ladies who one of them hurt another one's feelings, and that was a while back, however many years, and they'd never gotten fixed. So that's one of the things we add into the mix is one-on-one conflict resolution, okay? So they did great. They did great. It was a lot of fun. Now, see, I need to do a time check here. I'm actually going to just kind of skim over this quickly. You can read that. It's about recruiting strong boards. Just a tip about how to do that. Give them what nobody else gives them. Guarantee that you won't take more of their time than you told them you were going to take. Think about how many boards are actually making this commitment to their members. Now, how you keep that commitment takes a little bit of work. You have to go to meetings in order to make that happen. But if you string all these levels together and you have meetings that people want to come back to, then you can pull that off. You can actually set up committees where people are counting the time and they're evaluating performance and so on, and you can guarantee it. But everybody hates going to meetings, right? Well, not everybody, but it's pretty common. Has been for a long time. So sustaining groups, core technology, create meetings that people love. How do you do that? Top 2 complaints of people. I worked with an organization up in Rochester, New York, and their problem was people were not showing up in the community. They were dropping out. And I got them to come to one meeting, a big training it was a leadership training on collaborative community. And they knew they weren't collaborating and they knew they weren't community, so they showed up to find out, what is this about? So once they're in the room, I said, it was the Mankind Project in upstate New York, an organization I've been involved with for, since '93. It's an international service organization. So I just asked them 2 questions. What had you staying away? And what would have you want to come back to meetings? And they told us. I made a list. It's not that hard. The top 2 answers about why you stay away is that. It wastes my time, it's not an efficient use of time, and there's annoying people, there are dominating people that control the meetings. Now that happens to be the same as what an opinion research poll in 2007 said. It listed all these reasons, and the top 2 boiled down to that. So, how do you not waste time, and how do you deal with annoying people? You know that guy? First name is Renee. What does the first one mean, Latin students?
I think therefore I am.
And what does I think therefore I am? What does the second one mean?
I talk, therefore I am great.
That's right. I talk, therefore I'm important. Yeah, or I'm great. So that's part of the problem, the philosophical underpinnings of the trouble we have with meetings. 4 fixes when you have people dominating meetings. This is like door prizes for y'all. 1 is a prearranged learning opportunity. What that means is if you know there's an offender, a chronic offender, Say, can I talk to you about your role in the meeting? Give them an assignment. Ask them if they're willing to learn. Set up some markers that you can call in if they're talking too much. But if you're in a learning mode, if you're learning how to have better meetings, which is always the contract I use with organizations, then that will fall into place. Individual learning contracts of individual participants to be better participants. And almost nobody will refuse to go along with an invitation like that. One of the things that the Mankind Project uses, it's all these guys. It's a men's organization. And sometimes the meetings get big, 100, 120 people. And sometimes people talk too much. They have a convention and anybody in the room can just say, "Have mercy, brother." And the guy goes, "Oh, sorry," backs off. If he doesn't, 3 more people go, "Have mercy, have mercy, have mercy." That's a little technique. You get an agreement to use it. If I'm leading or you're leading, you can say, it's okay to say, "May I interrupt you?" Now, who's going to refuse that? People don't say no. Well, some do, but there's various levels of conflict resolution. Okay? May I interrupt you? I want to hear more from those who have not yet spoken. Like Mary, I know you know this, and other folks that lead groups, right? You do these things. There are ways to go about this. It is not necessary to have dominators dominate. Okay? Now, this is the one-sentence question, one-sentence answer thing I was referring to at the beginning. That's the structure of what I call the novice game. People know it as one-sentence question, one-sentence answer. So for some groups, we will install this procedure and we will move into that structure. The clock starts and I moderate, and if you try to use 2 sentences, I will call you on it, have you come back to 1. And if somebody wants to give an answer that's multiple, we'll say, practice putting it in 1. Now I'm going to give you a chance to do that in a couple minutes. It's not the usual way we transact, but with a little practice, it totally controls that whole dominating thing. Believe me, totally. It's fun. I mean, it kept the trainer at the Apple store from dominating me with all his wisdom. Oh, incidentally, one of the things that happened in that session, I asked them a question, and for the first time ever, and I'd been to a lot of training sessions at the Apple store, for the first time ever, I heard words out of his mouth I'd never heard before. You know what they were?
I don't know.
I don't know. 6 times in that space of 40 minutes, he said, "I don't know." And the other thing that was interesting was that after he said that, most of the time I said, "I don't care." But otherwise, previously, he would start teaching me about it because he assumed if I asked it was important. But it wasn't. He didn't know. I said, "I don't care, let's move on." So that's the novice game. Then, why people come back to meetings? Meaningful work, effective work, make a difference in the world, positive relationships with the other people they're meeting with. They don't want to be bored, so if you teach them something they didn't already know every time, that helps with the anti-boredom thing. So do playful activities. Have fun. Duh. All right? And they want to be respected for their time and contribution in some way. So we teach a lot of exchange of positive regard and recognition. And I know you know all these things. Well, I hope you do. And I'd like to have it be systematic. If there's a list, I actually use this list in my head to make sure that every time I design a meeting, I'm hitting every one of these on purpose. And then I look to see in the group, like a board or a leadership team, that somebody is covering every one of these for every meeting. And we have certain guidelines and things we put in place to structure those kinds of things. And some people go to meetings because they're getting paid to go. Another matter. Or they're, like in networking, they're developing business. Now, power discovery questions. That's what I call the process of, coming to a much stronger question. One of the things I've noticed in all the work groups that I work with is, in this culture, in the West, we are in a hurry. Anybody ever notice that? Like, we work hard, we're in a hurry. So somebody will put out a question that's, in my judgment, partly formed and partly informed, and then everybody will go to work on it. And what we're interested in is, was that really the best question? Who's that? Good guess, Socrates. Yeah, all those old guys made out of alabaster look the same. So Socrates' deal was, his students would come and they would ask him a question. And he knew that if he gave them an answer to that question, that he was participating with them in a frame of reference that was unworthy of their inquiry. So he came back with a better, stronger question, and they had to rise up to understand that question. They'd ask a better one, stronger one, and he'd come back with another one. That's the Socratic method. Okay? We're just updating that a little bit. Power discovery questions. All right. Here's an example. Now, let me see. Let's start with this one. Nah, it doesn't matter. Okay. Who can give me the date that sexism ended in the United States, please? Now, I could tell you what you should do to eliminate domestic abuse and sexism. I could give you a speech and a lecture about that. And I could particularly lecture the guys in my group about male dominance and stuff. We've tried that for quite a few years. If we ask questions, though, we might come up with something else. We don't have the date that sexism ended in the United States. I'm going to do this for the U.S. now. I know that there's other parts of the world. How many of you are raised in this culture in the U.S., born and raised? Stick your hand up. That's a lot of people. Not everybody, but it's most. How many of you inherited the culture in which you were raised? Hands? How many of you would like to say you were untouched and unprogrammed by the culture in which you were raised? Okay, some people like to say that. It's open to inquiry, but almost everybody says that you were raised in a culture in which sexism never ended and you were programmed by that culture. Next question. What's the date that sexism ended in your particular biography, in your individual biography? When was that? And it can be the guys and it can be the women. When was internalized sexism gone from your biography? So I don't have that date personally. What does that mean then, if I don't have that date in my biography? It means when I walk in the door, modern sexism walks in the door. My inheritance comes with me, unconsciously, or semi-consciously. So now I am in the inquiry of how is my history, my cultural history, playing out everywhere I go. No blame, no shame. I'm just alert to the fact that it probably is. I assume it probably is. Where is it? You see how that goes? So now I'm in a learning inquiry, just from a series of what I would call power questions. With me on this? No blame, no shame. The whole context of this is learning. Okay, then you're a racist. Now, we can use the 5 levels to ask more powerful questions systematically. For example, I was doing a training some years ago in Chicago. It was the second day in the morning. We had a particularly intense night before, a mixed group of folks. And a black woman came in, and I was leading a session, and she said, "You're a racist." She called me a racist in front of everybody. Remember the levels? Do you think I took it personally? Some people are going, no. Some people are not going to vote no matter what I ask. And some people are going, yeah, I would have. All right. Yeah, I took it personally. However, I had a structure. So I went back to her and I said, I hear that and I want to understand it. Do you mean that you see inside me attitudes and beliefs, bias, prejudice about color? And she goes, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Did I say something to you yesterday that offended you? Because if so, I'd like a chance to clean that up. What level is that question? Interpersonal. She says, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Okay. So I go, well, did you think or see or hear that I contribute to organizations, institutions that perpetuate sexism, inequity? And she goes, no, that's not what I'm talking about. So I'm kind of running out of levels here, right? What's another level that I could inquire? A power question at another level. Cultural. So I said, do I represent typical white guys to you? And she goes, yeah. She says, duh, I hate all white people day to day. You know what happened to me? This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. I'm fed up with you people. And I said, I understand. My group, not me, my group, although it could have been me, but I asked her and she said no. My group has done a lot of things to your group. I understand that. I understand you're angry about that. Your anger is welcome here. And you know what she said? Thank you for once somebody listened to me instead of making it all about themselves. You see? If I'd gone on the personal level, it would have all about me, wouldn't have listened. That is the use of power discovery questions systematically at those levels to find out what's going on so I can connect and take the action that would work. Okay? Most of the time, when groups go to help people without their permission, which is a dysfunctional rescue, or in an uncontrolled fashion, they will help from the level that they like. That's what we call your default level. That's where you may have gone when I asked you that question, what was the solution to domestic abuse? Now, I know that a lot of you are creative and you can go to different levels, and you understand those, but most of us have a preferred level, and our profession often reflects that. Somebody goes into political science, economics, or law enforcement. What level professions are those on the face of it? Or a legislator in Congress? Institutional level professions. Yeah. How about somebody in PR, marketing, or a storyteller, or a musician, or an artist? Those are all one-to-many communications. Cultural level professions. That's kind of how we look at it. Okay. What's my next power discovery question? What I invite you to do is to ask yourself, where would I like more sustainability in my life, in my organization, in my group? Ask the question at each one of those levels. What do the questions sound like at each of those levels if you're inquiring into the sustainability of your own existence or your own organizations? Okay? At a personal level, I might ask, how's my energy level? How do I feel? What information are my emotions giving me about the environment that I keep going to over and over? Is it sustainable for me at a personal level? Raising or depleting my energy? You get it? What key relationships do I need to clean up, repair, strengthen, or form in order for my environment to be sustainable? And I keep going with that, just down the road, okay? Where are we going from here? Well, I would say first, recognize that it's okay to insist on sustainability instead of putting up with the lack of it in our organizations and groups. At whichever level it's not sustainable, we don't have to put up with it. We can change the world in our own meeting space. Master the 5-level analysis. Ask the power discovery questions off of that way of looking at things. Plant sustainability seedlings. What I mean by that is take an action at each one of those levels that's small and healthy, and it'll grow. I believe there's nothing big that doesn't start small. And the quality of what we do small is extremely important. In chaos theory, complexity theory, that's extreme sensitivity to initial beginnings, high dependence on new beginnings. Birth stories. We're all absolutely fascinated by birth stories, and how I met your mother, or what's the story of your relationship, how did it begin? We want to know those stories because in those birth stories is the seed of what happens, what becomes of us. That's why all cultures all around the world have always been interested in what the academicians call cosmogenesis. Where did we come from? What is the story of our people? People like Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung and Mircea Eliade, who compared all the cultures around the world, they see that as a common thread. We want to know the beginnings. So if we're doing sustainability, planting that seed with that intention at each of those levels that's my wish. And when we do that, I believe we become transformational leaders for sustainable social change. Who has a question? Now you're all terrorized, think you got to do it in one sentence?
When are you going to write the book?
I hate that question. I would love for it to be out this spring because it's attached to a training which has a workbook and a training manual along with it.
Nice one-sentence answer.
How do we make more money?
Thank you. How do I make more money? Did I hear that? Who said that? How do I make more money? Who's got a one-sentence answer for him? Stick your hand up.
Work.
Stick your hand up, I'll call on you. What'd you say?
Work hard and be lucky.
Work hard and be lucky. You want another answer?
Yes.
Okay, take another. Another hand? Stick it up if you got a one-sentence answer for him. How do I make money?
Look for another job.
You gotta stick your hand up.
Look for another job.
All right, look for another job. You want another answer?
Sure.
Okay, take another. Yes?
Do something you're good at.
Do something you're good at. You want another answer? You good? Okay. I yield the floor, he says. Great. Who has a question? Yes.
Can you recap the 5 levels again?
Yes, I
On
can.
the list? What are the 5 levels?
The 5 levels are personal, interpersonal, group, cultural, and institutional.
Thank you.
Do you have another question?
Not now.
You yield the floor. Who has a question? We all get to be novices. You know that? We're all experts. Did you know that? We're all experts and we're all novices. It's useful to know which side of the curve we're on. The way I found that out was trying to coach my 10-year-old some years ago on his arithmetic homework. I was the geek. I was the expert. And I was overwhelming him with knowledge. I wasn't letting him be empowered to guide me one sentence at one question at a time, you see. So we're all geeks at some point. Question, yes?
Where does intuition come into a lot of the process?
Where does intuition come into a lot of the process? I consider intuition as a personal level skill that can be intentionally developed as part of either a sustainability or leadership development. Do you have another question on that?
Flexibility.
Sorry?
Flexibility.
What's the question? Put it in the form of a question.
So the same thing of how do you incorporate the flexibility?
Okay, where do we incorporate the concept of flexibility into this model? When I hear a term like a virtue, such as flexibility, I'm going to ask the question, what does it look like at the personal level, like yoga? What does it look like interpersonally, like I'll shut up and listen to you for a change? What does it look like at a group level, you see? Do you have another question? Yield the floor. Who has a question? Yes.
Was that botanical garden successful? Reached their goal?
Was that botanical garden successful? Did they reach their goal? That was 2 questions. Yes. I'm glad to say. Who has a question?
Do you see any consistent success factors for groups? Meaning, what groups take to this process?
Okay, so that was 2 questions. Pick one for me. Make my life easier.
What factors determine the success of the groups that you talk to?
What factors determine the success of the groups that I talk to? The most important would be a willingness to learn something they don't already know and be willing to schedule the time to show up to take it from there. Do you have another question?
That's a good answer. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Who has a question? About anything, because you can ask not just me, like you saw it, you can ask a question, the whole room can answer it if you like. That's what the novice game does. In fact, I did it for 250 pharma people up in D.C. at a joint regulatory conference of the Parenteral Drug Association and the FDA. This big old formal conference been going on for 25 years. They wanted to know, how do I work across cultural differences globally? And you have to understand that the guy sitting next to me was born in mainland China, educated in Chicago, working in Switzerland for a French company that was doing business in Brazil and trying to put a joint venture together with some people in Russia, something in Ukraine. You see? So there's all these people, and they're all doing that, and they wanted me to tell them in 90 minutes how to work internationally, globally, cross-culturally. So guess what we did? I got a panel of 12 people who'd been traveling all over the world for their careers, who had a lot of experience, put them up on the stage, and gave each one of them a number, 1 through 12, on a placard. Then I gave the microphones to the audience, the 250, and I taught them this, and I said, who has a question? And one person stood up and asked the question. I said, 1 sentence, please. And then any panelist that had an answer to that question could hold up their card, and that person would call out number 4, and they get a 1-sentence answer, not a speech. And then that person could say, I'll take another answer, number 5, see? So the audience completely controlled their learning on the subject, and everybody got to play. Everybody that wanted to got to play. We went for a little over an hour. So you can do it under such circumstances. Anybody else have a question? And how am I doing on time? Are we okay? How much more do we have?
A few minutes.
A couple minutes. Okay, a couple more questions. I saw you first, I think.
How can I learn more from you?
How can I learn more from you? Best way is to send me an email and get into a conversation in which I could find out where you're coming from, so I can tailor the answer to that. And my email address is Dr. Griggs at Gmail, Dr. @ Gmail. Got any more questions?
I'll do that. You have the floor.
Okay, and then who has a question? Yes.
Do you view the groups, the 5 different categories, equally, or do some seem to have more consistent problems with the organizations you work with?
Do I see the 5 level categories as of equal importance, or do some groups have more of a problem with one than another?
Yes.
Did I get that right? Okay. There is no agreement in the general population or in my head about one of these levels being more important than another. And when an organization is in conflict or turmoil, they are probably in conflict and turmoil because they are coming from different levels as they attack the problem and therefore neutralize each other. So I wouldn't pick one out, but rather sort them, lay them all out on the table. Does that answer your question? You have another?
Yes.
You can have a follow-up.
No follow-up.
Okay, yield the floor. All right, time for one more and then we'll close. Yes?
Have you developed an instrument or instruments for, because it seems like these 5 areas are kind of scaled, are able to be scaled. I asked them, I'm a survey researcher, so.
Okay. So did you all hear that? Have I developed an instrument around these levels because it appears that they're scalable, and I am a research...
I do institutional survey research.
Institutional survey research. So just parenthetically, what level of profession does that sound like?
Institutional.
Institutional. Yeah, it's data gathering and number crunching and like that. Okay. No. And I'd be open to a conversation to explore something more. It might be useful for the online training and evaluation. Okay. Thank you all very much.